To this conversation now, the VBS Mutual Bank case will return to court in August for an application to separate trials of the accused. Alleged kingpin Denim Caesar wants a separation of his case from the 13 other co-accused. Meanwhile, the bank's liquidation team has so far recovered 159 million rand of the nearly 2 billion rand stolen by many, or rather many depositors, though, remain in limbo. Let's speak now to Tshenuwani Farisani Foundation CEO, Mr. Kenneth Mathivha, who joins us for more on the story. The foundation was formed on behalf of the VBS depositors. Mr. Mathivha, good evening to you, and thank you very much for your time. Can I begin by asking just how many people were left destitute after the collapse of VBS Mutual Bank?
Maybe to make a correction, the Tshenuwani Farisani was not formed on behalf of VBS depositors. The foundation is a foundation that looks after the interests of everybody else, GBV and the community interest. The VBS is just one of those cases that landed on our lap and we had to deal with it.
All right. No, thank you very much for that correction. Let's then start with the conversation as to how many people in total, to your knowledge, were left destitute when this bank collapsed.
We still have more than 500 people who are left destitute. These are all elders. These are vendors who sell their wares around the streets of Thohoyandou. These are pensioners who now lay in limbo because they can't access any money for their own health care.
When the depositors hear, for example, in the news today that liquidators have been able to recover some 159 million rand thus far, is there an expectation on their part that these monies, hopefully some of it, will be given back to them?
Look, there's no surety, there's no word that is coming from the curators as to whether this money will eventually find their way to the people that matters the most. There's a lull in these villages, there's a lull in this town and villages around Thohoyandou, around Bembe district, as to whether the money will go back. Even the convictions that are being talked to on television, on radio, they don't matter more on these people because nobody's telling them whether they will access their monies. These are people whose stokvels, whose funeral parlors, whose deposits, whether they're 20,000, 10,000 or 500 rand, it's a lot of money for them because they don't work. Most of them have since died without accessing any money that is due to them.
Yeah. You know, in a way, you've gone some distance, Mr. Mathivha, in answering the next question I was going to ask, and it's got to do with the typical VBS depositor, the profile. Give us a clear understanding of who would that person be who would ordinarily go to VBS to say, this is my money, I'm keeping this money here for a rainy day, or it could be someone who was depositing the money for burial purposes, we understand. Just give us just a quick glance as to who the typical VBS depositor was.
When the bank was initiated in the early 1980s, around 82, 83, a lot of people, especially pensioners, especially vendors, found a vehicle that would be able to save their money because they didn't trust the main banks that are there in South Africa because they're too far for them. They don't even know where they are. Here's a bank that they could put a face because they knew who Madambi was. They knew who some of the directors were. These were some of the directors generals of the former vendor homeland, the Bantustan then. But the initiative of a bank that they can call their own, that is called by their name, meant a lot. This is an ordinary person who goes to the warehouse, and buys, who goes to the farm and bring back some tomatoes, some potatoes and sell on the streets of Thohoyandou. They were able to save 50 rand. The bank would allow them to withdraw even 50 rand. At the time, main banks wouldn't allow anybody to withdraw even a mere 100 rand. Now, they were able to save for their children who ordinarily would not have access. There was no NSFAS then, there were no scholarships. They were able to send their children to school. When the University of Venda was started at that time, most of them were able to send their children to school who are now professionals, but most of them lost all this money.
In your statement, you say that some people who were very outspoken about the pillaging of this bank, those people, some of them have been killed, murdered. Give us names of these victims, and the understanding is that there is an ongoing court case about that. Where is that case right now?
These were leaders of South African Municipal Workers Association who were based here in Thohoyandou. Timson Musecho and Ronald Mani were murdered, cold-blooded murder by hired guns. We have since found that these guys who are standing trial at the High Court here have been hired. Who hired them? We're yet to find out. Our patron, veteran Dr. Tshenuwani Farisani, attends that case every day. He comes out of that court case crying every day because of the evidence that is being led, the things that are being said in there. Wherever was, whoever is out there is still out there. Our patron has also been threatened, followed by unnamed cars who followed him and says, "You're talking too much." In the past 3 days here in Thohoyandou, when we went to talk to some of the people who have lost all their money, some of them are now afraid again. Whoever's threatening them is still out there. Is still threatening these people that if you talk too much, you will die, you will be killed. So this is a volatile area. This is a volatile situation. People have lost their monies, but whoever has funded this whole pillage is still out there.
The people who are in police custody right now for murdering the two individuals you spoke about earlier, have they said anything in court as to who sent them?
They haven't said anything. That's the demand we're making, that whoever has sent them, they should mention the names, whether they're politicians, whether they're high-ranking officials anywhere else, they should be able to mention those names so that there could be closure. The families have lost their father, they've lost their husbands, and they still don't have any cent, and the beneficiaries haven't received any cent of their monies. So we're still waiting for that. The case is still ongoing. It will again sit in the next few days.
Let's talk about the politicians. You've prompted that particular question by mentioning politicians. Let's talk about these politicians who benefited from the looting of VBS Bank. They are not from one single party. The understanding is that it's a variety of these political parties. Talk to us about whether there are any who have committed to paying back the monies that they received unduly so.
Matodzi has been very smart with whoever he was working with Truta, the CFO. They've been very smart. They created an entity called Verde Investments, which would be the major shareholder of VBS. So monies would be deposited into these Verde Investments, pillaged from VBS directly, and then a lot of other companies would be created that would pay all these other people. We have since noted that the EFF has promised to pay back the 1 million per month that they were given, the 5 million gratification. If they're true to their word, they should pay it back. But it has also emerged that the ANC, which seeks to represent the majority of the people of South Africa, Limpopo has in the past elections voted overwhelmingly for the ANC, Now, the ANC calls itself the leader of society. We believe it. Now, if the ANC says it's the leader of society and they've been given money to pay for service provider, yes, it didn't come directly from VBS, but it came from one of the entities that Matodzi mentions. They should be able to stand and say, we are ethical leaders, we'll pay the money. The South African Communist Party, which calls itself the vanguard of the poor people, we're happy. The South African Communist Party has been here at the High Court and talked to people with our leader, our patron, Dr. Tshenuwani Farisani, who is a member of the SACP. Now we're saying, if they stand to be true to their word, you should be able to pay the 3 million that was paid to a service provider, and we have closure. And then we'll be able to tell these people that these parties represents you, these parties respect you. They've paid the money so that you can get your legal deposits that you put into the bank.
You mentioned the EFF, and the reason I'm picking on them is, to your words, to use your words, you're saying that there is a commitment to pay back the 1 million rand per month that had been paid to them. They may come back to us to say they refute that statement. Do you know exactly, Mr. Mathivha, who made that commitment from the EFF to pay back at least the 1 million rand per month?
We have seen in the recent interviews from their former chairperson talking this and that. In one of the interviews, he said, if indeed they have benefited from VBS, they are committed to pay back. We're taking on their word from that.
I want to thank you very much for your time. And my understanding, sir, is that there could be an event that is going to be a gathering of these VBS depositors. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that event and what is planned, when it is for?
Yes, there's a media briefing that is being organized for tomorrow, where some of the depositors will be able to talk a lot more and outline the way forward as to what is it that they need to do in order to be satisfied with the events that are taking place, the court happenings, the appearances, separation, the commitments that are being met, so that people can have a closure. And we hope tomorrow, when this happens, a lot will be revealed.
Perhaps as a parting shot, do people who feel that they are today even poorer because of the collapse of this bank, is there a feeling from them that the politicians who purport every day to speak on behalf of the poor, the downtrodden, is there a feeling that at least they should face them face to face and apologize for what has happened?
Most definitely. Ethical leadership that we preach about as a foundation is about people making a commitment to the people they feel they represent, they claim to represent, that a face-to-face makes a closure, a reparation of some sort, where people are able to say, we're sorry, this happened, it will never happen again. And maybe with that, there will be some sort of closure.
Kenneth Mathivha is the CEO of the Tshenuwani Farisani Foundation, speaking in part on behalf of the depositors. Thank you very much for your time, sir.